Hello, it's Thursday night. Garland Nixon here, hanging out with Andrei Martyanov, and some interesting things happening in the area of military material. Let's talk. Hello, Garland Nixon here, hanging out with Andrei Martyanov on a Thursday night. Andrei's got a great blog, Reminiscence of the Future, and of course, Smoothie X12, his great, outstanding YouTube page, YouTube show, and it's actually one of my favorites. I never miss one. They're usually about a half hour long. They're fairly short, unlike a long-winded person like me who never knows when to shut the hell up. Andrei understands how to get to the point and actually get out. So, but we're going to talk about, there's a whole heck of a lot going on. One of the things I wanted to ask you about, what we've been hearing, for the last 3 years is Wunderwaffen, game changer, M777s, M1 Abrams, F-16s, on and on and on. But that's been all about public relations. One of the most significant, technological advances that the Russians have been able to achieve is their hypersonic missile fleet, I'll say, because they don't just have one. Other people are trying to develop one. They've got several different kinds. So I watched this. I was watching something online, and President Putin was, I don't know if he's breaking a bottle of champagne or whatever the hell you do with a submarine, but the submarine is to be launched soon, and they said it's the first Zircon missile carrier. Now, I know that there are ships that carry the Admiral Grigorsky or something that's loaded, and they're on land. There's ships that's loaded with them. But it seems to me that submarines having him is a real game changer because, let's face it, you can find the ship, but a submarine can just pop up anywhere, and really, I mean, it can be sitting right off the coast of the U.S. So tell me, what's up with these two things? There are people who may not understand the Zircon missiles. So if you could, and the difference between, say, a Zircon and the Houthis have hypersonics, or this,
no, they don't.
So,
they don't.
Yeah. So what's the difference between the Zircon missile and the technology there and its abilities, as opposed to some of these other things that are just talking about the speed?
Well, the issue here is very simple. First, if we talk about real hypersonic weapons, theoretically, even ballistic missiles are, well, technically hypersonic. They fly sometimes, well, very often, especially intercontinental ballistic missiles, they fly in space, which is, of course, air free. So, but yeah, they fly Mach 27, things of this nature. Yeah, so they're hypersonic. Well, in reality is, and when they approach the target, they slow down anyway because obviously of the atmosphere. But the real hypersonic weapons are such as Kinjal, which is, of course, aeroballistic missile, and it flies strictly within atmosphere. Same goes for Zircon, but if, for example, Kinjal, which is carried by MiG-31s case, and now by Su-34s, it also is sort of, the quasi-ballistic, aeroballistic. That means it has the burnout period, the huge boost phase, which accelerates it to Mach 10, 11. And then it flies just like ballistic missile, but it flies within atmosphere. And then, of course, we have Oreshnik, but that's the whole other story together with Avangard. Avangard is the strategic weapon. And again, it launched by the suppressed trajectory, usually by the intercontinental ballistic missile. In this particular case, Russian Avangards are sit on top of the Stilet intercontinental ballistic missiles, and they are being stuck in like 10 things simultaneously at Sarmat RS-28 intercontinental ballistic missile. What they do, they also launch them then they basically descend within atmosphere, and they fly within atmosphere. That is why, for example, warhead which flies in space with Mach 27. Here's the news. There are no sound in space. In space, nobody can hear you, okay? So, and they don't experience those loads and impact of the enormous temperatures. So, but hypersonic weapons, that's what they do. They fly within atmosphere. That's what makes them so dangerous. And of course, Zircon, unlike it is the previous types which I mentioned, Zircon flies constantly under own power. Again, within atmosphere, and usually like between 20 to 30 kilometers elevation. And it flies constantly under own power, accelerates to Mach 11. That means it maintains the speed. It obviously can change the profile of the flight. And then, yeah, it reaches the target and attacks vertically down. So, so, and we can only speculate now because Oreshnik, obviously, people have to ask the question: what is the accuracy of those things? Extremely accurate. In fact, ridiculously accurate. So there you go. And Vladimir Putin actually launched today Perm. Perm, actually, this is how the city is called. It's a very famous Russian city. It's on the foothills of Urals. And it's the first which people may not understand. Shtatny. He said shtatny, that means what? Zircon specific. That means Zircon is a specific, carrier for Zircon. The other submarines of this class also can carry Zircons, such as Kazan, for example, which visited Cuba recently. As you might remember, there was a whole panic in the Atlantic. And this is not specific missile for them. And the issue, I would say, because obviously we know very little, would be with their equipment, specific equipment for their what is called onboard testing, maintenance, and developing of the firing solutions, specific for Zircon. Albeit, nowadays combat information control systems, they do it all, So and yeah, the Perm was launched today, and that's yet another one. And Russians continue to build them. Five are being built. Another 2, 3 coming after that. So probably, I don't know. It's again, this is always portioned. How many Russians plan to build, but I think so. There will be, my guess, 7 in the end. There will be 7 on the Pacific Fleet, 7 at the Northern Fleet, and maybe then they will add more. So,
right now, the Zircon, my understanding of the range is somewhere 1,700 to 2,000 kilometers, in that range.
Officially 1,500 kilometers.
Okay.
So, but people speculate if it is thermonuclear, because obviously Zircon is capable of carrying thermonuclear. But we know that conventional warhead of Zircon, with conventional, I don't know what will be the load, probably, I don't know, 400 kilograms, like 800 pounds. But with such speeds like Mach 10, you can do it without explosives. So, and at least 1,000, probably yet also within close to 1,500 kilometers. And you correctly stated, when they pop up, just for example, I constantly use this graphics, and it's a very simple mathematics, really not difficult. You have to search to detect the submarine when you have the range, let's say 1,000 kilometers, and Russians will have the targeting because they have a really good constellation, which is actually beyond the reach of the anti-satellite weapons by the United States. It's called Liana, and there are other things which can produce the targeting. Just to give you an example, multiply 1,000 by squared, which is 1 million. So then times, pi r squared, the area of the circle. So 3.14 times 1 million. We have the area from the center, let's say, of the carrier battle group, from the carrier itself, with the area of 3.14 million square kilometers. Okay, that's the area of India. Good luck doing the search, especially when you consider the fact how you have to search that type of area, what will be your operational sweep, and especially if there are two subs, what are you gonna do? You just fat target, and nothing could be done. In fact, is even the Hawkeyes, which are the most remotest edge of the sensor, so to speak, in early warning of the carrier battle group, well, they're still not capturing enough the distance. The maximum the carrier battle group can touch is about 850 kilometers from the carrier. So they will not even see when this thing flies, and once it's just up there, you just will not see. You will not know what is coming, and they cannot intercept single one, but usually you do salvos, several, and you just can do nothing really.
Let me ask you this: if it strikes the target, you mentioned that it can do a lot of damage even with just the kinetic energy of it. How does that affect it? I mean, let's say a ship got hit by an 800 kilogram. Well, that's going to do some nasty damage, sure. But if that's traveling, 10,000 miles an hour, how does that change that damage that it does? Does it just
It's gonna
penetrate
sink.
further?
Yeah,
Okay.
single Zircon probably can sink on the Ticonderoga class cruiser in a single hit. It will sink it and not damage it. It's gonna just demolish it, and especially if it's armed. So, and the kinetic energy is insane. We know that it's changes as the square of the velocity, and so it's, how to say it. Let me put it this way: single Zircon, when hitting the, let's say, God forbid, of course, any kind of ship, it will have the kinetic energy unarmed without explosives 100 times more than a single harpoon anti-shipping missile. So it means what? It's like you will have essentially 100 harpoons flying into you. Well, not quite like this, but that will be the effect. It's just going to break it up. For a couple of Zircons will be enough to basically demolish the carrier itself, 100,000 pounds of displacement. And so, yeah, you cannot stop it.
Now, let me ask you this. I did want to know, you mentioned the Oreshnik. And I saw some video of what I guess was an Oreshnik. You saw apparently it carries, it's hypersonic, and it carries like 6 pods, and each one has 6 missiles, and each one of those are hypersonic. But my understanding is the ones that have been used, there's a new option with some kind of an explosive metal or something that heats rather than a traditional conventional explosive.
Well, I mean, I can quote only Vladimir Putin, but actually, people from a number of the Russian institutes which developed Oreshnik, including their directors, it reaches temperatures upward of 5,000 degrees. It's about the same, slightly less than the surface of the sun. So you can imagine that what kind of the heat. So yeah, it's a whole other story altogether how this thing works. But I don't think so. It even really needs any kind of explosives, frankly. Did we see any photos of the Yuzhmash from here? Of course not. And they will never put them out. You know why? Because it's not there. So,
right.
And because they cannot admit this. Good Lord. I mean, people saw this video. Russians obviously were really prepared to do that. They had excellent ISR. They placed proper cameras, and we saw the result. Yes, correct. 36 of them, and it's gone. This thing was enforced with the special concrete, and other types of reinforcement to survive. Actually, aerial nuclear explosion, which is literally over it. Some 100 kiloton kind of scale. Well, it didn't survive things which were not nuclear, and because they penetrated, and yeah, they're still probably just digging it out, and yeah, it's a game changer, and we don't even know what are those. We know that they're extremely hot. they could be obviously guided by the classic trajectory, but I think it wasn't. It was still suppressed trajectory which they launched. It wasn't classic, the ballistic trajectory. And with this type of weapon, first, nothing going to survive. It penetrates very deep into the ground. How it survives, that's the state secret of the secrets, and nobody will tell anything about it. But we know that temperatures which are developing there are insane. I mean, basically, you take the piece of sun essentially and throw it at people. There you go, and it's just that's how bad it is.
So, well, and the first thing I thought of is this: if you have a port or something, some kind of a location, some kind of a strategic location where you're loading and unloading. Let's say you have a port where you're bringing in soldiers or bringing in anything like that. One of those hits it. It's over. One.
Well, one. Yeah, you have. They are evidently, multiple re-entry vehicles there, and for example, if you have 36 of them on a single missile, so a thing like this flies in, let's say, to the port of Marseille, which is a strategic port, or Bremenhaven, which is strategic port in Germany for NATO American troops to unload. Yeah, it will be gone. There will be no pier, no nothing, just ruins. And after that, where do you unload it? Because it's all funny stories. Nobody gonna be repeating the D-Day, with the story.
Right.
Yeah, it doesn't work like this anymore. You cannot put 70 tons of M1 Abrams on the sandy beach. It's gonna get stuck there forever. But I mean, the issue is, you basically control the ports in Europe, and so all this ideas and mythology that the United States somehow will sustain Europe and then pre-deploy its forces. No, it's not. Whatever will be able to get through the Atlantic lines, shipping lanes of communications, it will have no place where to unload it. Okay, so there you go. As simple as that. Yeah.
Now, let me ask you this. I did want to ask you. I've read that for instance, there's all the talk about Iran, that the Iranians have, and some other entities in the allies in the Middle East have pretty healthy supplies of Onyx missiles.
Syria had it, our Assad government. It had it in the expert variant, which is limited by the range of 300 kilometers. Russians use Onyx, which is with a range of 1,000 kilometers. So, but I don't know if you see, Iran bought some things and then developed, which some of them are knockoffs. Yeah. Could Iran, delivered something which is similar to Houthis? So far, I don't think so. Does Iran have something like this? Yeah, I'm pretty sure they do. Maybe not 1,000 kilometer range, but certainly 500, 600 kilometers for sure. They will be able to essentially shut down the whole Persian Gulf, just along the whole width of it. But Houthis, I don't think so. So, and because obviously that would mean tremendous escalation, because Onyx or its equivalent, its knockoff, will hit one of the U.S. Navy ships, if it's really that type of the missile. And that's going to be huge escalation, So, and United States naturally will blame what? It will blame Iran. The United States is on record that Houthis are extension of Iran, essentially. So, yeah, it's kind of like Houthis use their whatever cottage industry type missiles, and Iran supplies them with some, lower capability missiles, but that's about it. They still have range, like they're still able to hit Israeli cities here and there, but it's nothing in terms of comparable to what it could be in terms of the surface warfare when the serious weapons come into play, and that is, for now, even for Iran, it's a no, and same for Houthis.
Yeah, and I would think that it's possible that, let's just say, in Yemen, there's some much nastier weapons sitting there in the case that things escalated to a point where it needed to happen, as far as the Red Sea, that there's probably some things hanging around there in case they need them.
Yeah.
That's something I was wondering. Oh, I definitely want to ask you about this. I don't know if you saw this, but apparently North Korea has a plane that is based on the IL-76. Have you seen that?
I'm not sure that. Well, they Chinese. Their transport aviation is essentially knockoffs of the IL-76. They are
But
very.
it's like an AWACS kind of plane.
Okay, well, maybe, yeah. You can expect anything from Koreans. They are a little bit, on the crazy side. So they make all those weapons and the toys, but yeah, who knows? Yeah, possible.
Oh, okay. So I did want to ask you about particularly the US threats to Iran. Now, there are those who feel that, they're, making a big fuss to scare Iran or whatever. There are those who are concerned that, they may, actually attack Iran. Now, my understanding was a couple months back, Israel was determined to launch a retaliatory strike on Iran,
Yeah.
but they got near the border of Iran and they elected to turn back because a lot of their planes were going to get shot down. And my thought is, if the Iranians have a fairly significant air defense system from their own indigenous technological capabilities, now with their alliance with Russia, nobody's saying anything, but certainly we can suspect that Russia has upgraded and is working on upgrading them, which leads me to believe it would actually be foolish. I mean, let's face it, they say the F-35 is some kind of stealth, but I think those stealth days are kind of gone. If the United States was to try to launch effectively a big arrow offensive in the air against where, they come in with all of the planes and they're supposed to suppress the air defense, and then they come in and do that. I mean, that they could do that with Iraq. I would imagine if you come in and try that with Iran, you're going to take heavy losses, extremely heavy losses.
Well, the United States knows what Iran has. And the main trump card, so to speak, in Iran is this. It's second one. They have now two, if not three. This is a resonance radar. It's a stationary radar which operates multi-band, and it can detect, including hypersonic weapons, by the way, can detect ballistic targets on the range at the range of 1,000 kilometers and 600 plus the range of the aerial targets, including the targets which are low flying. It depends how it operates, but it's beyond the point right now. But they can see it. And that means, for example, Israel doesn't have such standoff weapons like United States has. Israel doesn't have JASSMs. They have Popeye and their other type of the what they call long-range weapon, but it's not. In order to launch Israeli weapons, you have to enter the range of the air defense systems of Iran. United States doesn't have to do this. Even with their, they have S-300 Iranians. I mean, they have the one around Bushehr. But those are primarily against, strikes with the ballistic missiles and some older missiles. United States has JASSM. JASSM has the range of 900 kilometers, and they're working on the extended range, which is 1,900 kilometers. So United States fights its SIAD, suppression of the enemy air defense, very simple. Just let's overload it. Let's throw hurl at it, whatever the hell we have, And so the United States obviously cannot afford to lose F-35 and entering the air defense zone, because obviously all this stealth thing is complete garbage, for the, basically making profits. And if they, God forbid, go at it, they will be hurling everything from, safe distance. So they will launch those planes. They will carry those JASSMs, however many United States has those, and they will be launching them from there. So once they run out of it, that will be it, and how many of them Iran will shoot down. Evidently, even what Israel tried to do, they didn't do much damage, honestly. There was some damage, there were some leakers, but Iranian air defense did really well, actually, So who knows, they might get some success, but as Scott correctly stated, if it comes down to it, who knows how many nut jobs are there, pressing on Trump. The only way for them to regime change, because this is what United States will be trying to do, regime change, not, just blow up some nuclear facilities, they will need to hurl a lot of missiles to do that and to do a lot of damage for Tehran. But I don't think so. The United States has the real capability to penetrate somewhere where the, let's say, supreme leader and its cabinet can hide. And whatever Russia is doing, Russia will be telling, obviously, to Iran that where the American assets are, if they are poised to attack, how they are going to attack, what to expect, and what will be the directions from which to expect. So that it's one thing. Second is nobody knows that there's a lot of talk about Su-35s for Iran. I didn't see there any tangible, evidence that they have it. And if they would have had it, I mean, they wouldn't just fly in Russia training. They probably by now would be incorporating them into the Iranian Air Force. I didn't see any kind of hint even, on there were some like Antonov 124s allegedly, carrying Su-35s, but who knows? I don't know.
Let me ask you this. All this talk about the B-1Bs and B-52s and all of that kind of stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Aren't they highly susceptible to air defense?
Yeah. I mean, the only thing they can do, B-52 is not survivable in the real environment. Same goes with B-1B. If that is true, for example, Tu-95, for example, of Russia. That's why they carry long-range standoff weapons. They are platforms. They're tasked not to go in and perform some magical tricks, in the air and say, look at me, like it was B-47. It had this horrendous method of their, which is called Cabrero, launching the bomb. It would fly almost vertically up. Can you imagine B-47 strategic bomber? And then release this bomb and then try to, that is why they always had cracks in their fuselages and they didn't serve for a long time. And, but no, their task is to get up there slowly, with rumble towards the launch position, which will be beyond any kind of the air defense, and, preferably not meet any kind of the opposing air force. And then launch from there, then turn around and go back home. Russians, for example, can launch anywhere practically in the world right now without leaving the Russian airspace. This is the other thing, which is like, wow, yeah, they really can. I mean, and that's what they do. They get out there, fly for an hour just for the heck of it, to practice, I guess, then launch. And yeah, Russians already have this missile, which is called KHBT. It's more than 8,500 kilometer range. So this is, just fly anywhere in Russia and you can launch it anywhere you want, really.
So an attack on Iran, what you're saying is, if the U.S. launched an attack on Iran, it would be long distance standoff missiles. They wouldn't send any planes in. Yeah. And however
they may try all those tricks, but, like special forces, SEALs get in and possible. But reality is it will be throwing everything it can at Iran.
And then they'll have to cross their fingers because Iran has the potential to throw a lot of missiles back at them in a hurry. If Iran elects to.
Yeah. You have the American bases in the Middle East gone. We saw, remember the last time they taught Israel a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
We saw it. I mean, all those, Boeing, Rafael, air defense, anti-missile systems, they have been breached easily. And what can I say? I mean, we saw everything. It was documented extremely well. So Iran can do a lot of damage, and I mean a lot. Remember last time in 2020, after Trump assassinated General Soleimani? Well, there were actually Dutch personnel who were crying, and Iranians actually warned NATO and American personnel to get the hell out of the way. And then attack what was the name of it? Good Lord. I mean,
the bases. I remember.
Yeah. So, and they can do it again. And this time, probably even worse than that, So, and they will not warn. So they will have to immediately remove if there is any plan. And that's what human intel does. For example, you have obviously Iranian agents in Qatar, in elsewhere in Middle East, and once Americans begin to move personnel into the hiding position, okay. So you may already kind of deduct that, okay, they are deduce rather, they gonna be going, getting ready for an attack of Iran. So, and that's how it works.
Yes. Now, I know Iran and Russia are allies. There's a lot of talk about Russia providing Iran with electronic warfare, EW systems. I don't understand that much. I just have heard they can block GPS or something, but I know it's a lot more than that. What do we need to know? Talk a little bit about electronic warfare in this day and age. What capacity, what abilities Russia has, what they do with it, and how can that also be used for anti-missile defense or air defense?
Yeah, it's obviously always is. It's jamming primarily, but there is not only jamming, there is spoofing. They can, for example, fool their missiles, especially with the ones which are with the electronic, which is called the active homing device, which have essentially a radar in the, they can spoof that. They can obviously spoof GPS. And for example, Tomahawk missiles, they have primarily this optical system. It's called the scene matching, whatever the hell, those abbreviations. But yeah, it's essentially terra combat in optical diapason, So, and they can fool them. And there is a lot of things which could be done, jamming, including communications. And whatever Russia provided Iran, we saw that how they very well, a few years back, intercepted the MQ-9, the drone, not drone, it's a UAV, the strategic UAV. And they just calmly, just intercepted their, signal and landed it. There you go.
So I would imagine now I don't know, not knowing military, but you would know this. I would imagine Russia, Iran, whoever, that in the event of war, that they have, sure, you want to say, look what lately Iran has been showing underground missile silos and various underground shipping missiles just to kind of let everyone know, you don't want to do this. But I would imagine that in the event that things really have thick, and I've heard this, that Russia have said, we have some other things other than Oreshnik that we don't talk about. That Iran, that countries that have high tech, Iran is now a pretty high tech country, would have some things that they wouldn't tell you that they'd have in case they really needed them. And I'm not just talking about nuclear, I'm saying other types of devices that would be very difficult to defend.
Yeah, very well could be the case. Obviously, United States tries to spy as much on Iran and to record and document whatever the hell they're trying to test. So, but you saw yourself with Oreshnik, they missed, for example, in Russia. But again, Russia is incomparably larger country and with all kinds of the capabilities to, do some things which will fool even your satellites. But the point is, Iranians, I'm pretty sure, as we saw the case with Israel, the latest one, it's just, they have everything what it takes to break through the best air defense, as they call it, in the West. That's by far not the best air defense in the world, but it's the best what they can provide. And Iran completely breached it, completely penetrated it. So whatever they have else, who knows, And then there is this interesting thing. Are the Iranian scientists somewhere in Russia doing their thing under the radar? Who knows? Very well could be. Also, what can I say? It's pure speculation.
Now, I've seen that Iran has submarines, but I don't know what their sub force looks like. I think it's rather fairly.
It's the only thing they have. The only thing they have is the 4 older project 677 Varshavyanka. These are 80s designs and 80s submarines. And whatever they build, it's not very serious. And I mean, it doesn't mean that it cannot do damage under some certain circumstances, but I mean, it's primarily for the show. They have those 4 submarines. How well they are maintained? My classmates, younger than me, I mean, the later graduate class of my Naval Academy, they have been actually the guys who were transferring those subs from St. Petersburg to Iran. They were not impressed then, with the Iranian naval personnel. But again, things might have changed since then. But yeah, they say that it's okay, they're okay. But no, I won't count on their submarine force, especially whatever they did, which is cottage industry level submarines. Okay, this is not serious.
Oh, okay. So it just sounds to me like the U.S. Here's what I think. The U.S. is accustomed to fighting really, really soft targets. Afghanistan, people that didn't have really any technological defense whatsoever. That even moving up to the level of Iran would be very, very difficult for the U.S. because regardless of how powerful the U.S. military is, we always have expeditionary forces. We have to go to them to fight. And it's very difficult to attack a hardened target. And realistically, the nation of Iran is a hardened target that's been hardening itself for decades, specifically for the U.S. to attack them. And I would imagine they've had help.
Yeah, the only way the United States can attack Iran from the point of view of ground forces, they will need force larger, much larger than whatever was done to, semi-literate and backward army of Iraq in Gulf War. I mean, Desert Storm 1.0. Iran not only has a capable ground force, what they have is the terrain in a much larger country. If you take a look at what it is, it's monstrously mountainous. That those passes, you just cannot really get there with a massive force and expect that you will succeed. This is not World War II when allies, namely Soviets and Great Britain, just took Iran and all that. This is different. And again, for example, Mazandaran, if you look attentively at the northern provinces of Iran and northern Azerbaijan, it's all mountains and forests. Let me tell you, it's much worse than Vietnam. Let's put it this way. How are you going to do this? Big red offenses. You can't. And guess what? They have a wonderfully secured Caspian Sea, which Russia will use, obviously, to supply them. And if they want to fight Russia, sure, be my guest. But if, comes hell or high water, so to speak, this is not doable. And I don't know, United States will need about 1 million people to control that kind of country. So good luck with that. Will they institute the draft? So the only hope, which is the classic American textbook thing, regime change, period. That's the only way, regime change, the terrorist acts, against their leadership and things of this nature. That's the only way, because the United States will sustain catastrophic losses fighting Iran on the Iranian soil. So the only thing that left, kill the leadership, regime change, and hoping that some, pro-Western, liberal, whatever you call it, Iranian, opposition, or however you call it, or MEC, which is the terrorist organization, which is supported by Mr. Bolton, and MEC is called terrorist, is designated as the terrorist organization. So yeah, they will go and just run Iran. Good luck with that. Right. So it's the country of 90 million people, and by far not all of them are admirers of their these Tehran liberals, urban liberals. They have their own idea about how they want to live. So there you go. It might start with the civil war, but it's oh my God, it's Afghanistan with Iraq combined will look like they're a stroll in the park compared to what might expect them in Iraq.
It seems to me that the U.S. thinks like this, and they even use these words: strike Iran, strike. It's like I could walk up and punch a person one time and walk away. Well, if you walk up and punch somebody, first of all, they're going to punch back. But secondly, you got a fight on your hands and you don't know how long it's going to be. So it seems to me like even looking at it, they're bringing B-1 bombers, they're bringing this and that, like they're planning for an attack on a country. Not starting to think if you attack a country, it's going to go. They're not just not going to sit there and wait. It's going to go on for a long time. And what do you do? It's like Ukraine. We're going to go in there and we're going to do this. And then the Russians will rise up and overthrow Putin. But when that doesn't happen, you're left with a mess on your hands and another loss. And can they, quote, strike Iran? Well, yeah, we don't know how many missiles will get through, and they may be surprised at how well Iran is able to defend themselves. But then what?
Yeah. The United States, the last strategies of the, important level, America produced. These were obviously George C. Marshall, and his operational planning department, and Ike, which was the huge part of it. So basically, these two guys, these were the world-class strategists. I can tell you one thing: many people, of course, especially a bunch of morons who watched junior officers who watched the pattern and still believe that, oh yeah, we're gonna do this, like, oh yeah, Third Army, go. Yeah. So yeah, they don't know the history of the World War II. But the point is, it was Ike who correctly stated, the broad front strategy. We move slow, but we do that. If that wouldn't have been broad front strategy, let me tell you, Ardennes and Battle of the Bulge would have happened much earlier, and there would be much larger losses, and loss of the momentum of the allies. But, it's for the operational level discussion. But the point is, these were the last ones. After that, look, the only generals United States produce are losers. Yeah, they can say, oh yeah, General Schwarzkopf, the great guy, make no mistake, the great guy, everything. He was tactician, essentially, what? He had this task at, having overwhelming advantage over some second-rate crappy army, and he did it what he was supposed to do. After 5.5 months of with impunity deploying forces and preparing training them. That's
In this day and age, no country, if you're planning on to attack them, like if the U.S. was planning on attacking Russia, Russia's not going to sit there and wait for 8 months for you to continue to bring ship after ship and load after load. Even Iran, if you're bringing, we're going to invade Iran, and you're bringing ship after ship and load after load of people, at some point you're going to say, well, those are to attack us. Oh, no, we're going to attack the points that you're bringing in people. Well, first of all, you wait till they build up a bunch of them. You wait till they get about 50,000 people there, and then you blow them all up.
Exactly. This is what didn't happen in what is for some reason, the only straw U.S. military grasped at is that, oh yeah, that's a storm. You have been allowed to do whatever you want with impunity. Saddam was a moron. Militarily, he was a moron, as were most of his generals. So, but yeah, just live with that, okay? Just let it rest. It was absolute anomaly, abomination, in fact, is from the point of view of war. And especially against the country whose gross domestic product is smaller than the gross domestic product of city of New York, okay? So, and when you look at this, it's just like, yeah, you have to preposition forces, okay? What do you do? How do you preposition forces? For example, if the United States wants to go, to fight, well, guess what? There are 56 preposition forces, the command of huge ships. Each of those ships, well, not all of them, but some of them can take at one time the battalion load of the, they can take battalion, about 600, whatever, battalion tactical group, they may say, but battalion, and load it with the, what's the name of it, with the equipment, and sail towards Iran or towards Iraq and unload it, because if they will decide to attack, they will decide to attack from the Iraq. Okay, from Iraq. Yeah, it's like, my God, we live in the 19th century. Let's send a pigeon, that say that they're sailing. Yeah, the Russians called the Tehran like immediately, like, okay, they have this flotilla, enter. Okay, we got it. It will be known within 20 minutes. Okay, and they need to constantly remember what was happening during the Desert Storm. the civilian airliners have been commandeered by the Pentagon, and they were flying the non-stop all those personnel while they were hauling this thing from Europe and elsewhere, to preposition it. And this was Iraq, okay? So, as I already stated, even without going into the operational calculations, you can calculate literally, depending on the data, at least, approximately, you can calculate required force. Let me tell you, it will require no less than 1 million of personnel to fight Iran and succeed. And basically the losses will be, Vietnam will look like, just pretty much excursion of high school excursion. Okay, so this is what it's going to be. And then, of course, when you look attentively at who Iranians are, well, there will be many people who will be fighting behind the lines, So it's going to be mess. But yes, they may try to regime change, no doubt about it, and they may yet succeed. But it doesn't matter that they will have the victory, because the country will be thrown in a complete mess. And you saw yourself, Afghans, just basically drove the U.S. Army out of there. And it's not about that how it from 2006. If you look at the Washington Post, what's the name of it? Afghanistan files. They already know that in 2006 they could do nothing, and they would live literally in Kabul next to basically Taliban. It's just that they were not armed. They were sitting there looking, oh yeah, good luck. As they said, you have the watch, you have the clock, we have the time. So they go. That's
the other thing is, if we're honest about it, okay, let's say they attack Iran. As soon as Iran closes the Straits of Hormuz, it's going to pretty much, I'm not going to say it's going to collapse our economy, but it would be devastating to our economy, number one. And if the Iranians felt as though there was an existential threat to their country, they'd probably flatten the oil infrastructure. They may attack at least some of the oil infrastructure. As soon as a conflict started, and there was any threat to the Straits of Hormuz, the prices of oil and energy around the world would spike to an unthinkable. If they closed the Straits of Hormuz, at that point, it would throw us into, America would not be the America that we know. And I might add this. If America would do something that reckless and jeopardize the economy, the Western economies, we'd be so isolated. A lot of other countries would probably take economic action against us. Our economy would be devastated. And I'll add this: let's say Trump does it 3 months into his presidency. That would effectively end his presidency.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. It will be the end of his presidency. And then there is another thing, and this is where it's dangerous. The first person who thought about it thoroughly was Admiral Elmo Zumwalt, during his tenure as the chief of naval operations in 1971, when the Soviets started to present one, anti-shipping missile after another. With, many people don't know, the first submarine launched underwater anti-shipping missile was Soviet. Soviets developed this technology. It was called Malachit, or Malachite, they pronounce it. It was Malachit. It was launched by the Project 670 submarines, nuclear power submarines. It was devastating. And suddenly Elmo Zumwalt says, what's going to happen if they hit our nuclear powered carrier, which they will? What are we going to do? Well, I can tell you what you're going to do. The Washington, D.C. will go hysterical and apoplectic, and they will demand nuclear strike. Simple as that. And Elmo Zumwalt was talking about this from the point of view that essentially the idea was that, we will have the political consequences, especially if you hit, let alone sink. Forget about damaging. Well, Houthis try, but it's all BS for now. That drones and all, they will not do this. But the point is, God forbids they strike, what's the name of it? Aircraft carrier. The symbol of Russia, American might, which is really not that mighty anymore, in the real deal. And you have the personnel killed in thousands, maybe. You have their air wing just basically demolished, even if that thing is still afloat. What are you going to do? It's a humiliation, and it is, of course, the fact. Oh, they damaged, if not, God forbid, sunk our national symbol. So, and what are we gonna do? Attack, launch nukes, and they will do that because United States is always nuclear biased nation because it is not very strong conventional. There's a lot of propaganda, of course, but a special military operation demonstrated, I mean, it was all for naught. And that's the situation we have to consider, And they know, for example, that Iran cannot respond with the nuclear weapons, and they might as well go for the whole, shebang. And well, after that, America, not only Trump's presidency, America as the superpower will end because we will have a political, geopolitical consequences of unimaginable scale. It is one thing to blow up, Hiroshima and Nagasaki under pretext that it's war and all that, although Japan by then was ready to surrender. And they were doing this to intimidate Soviet Union. But today, it's completely different story. And everybody has the phone. The evidently world has, last time I heard, which was a few years back, something like on the order of 10 billion smartphones. Some people have 2, some others have 3. People in some village in Himalayas, they have smartphones, They can always take a look. Oh my God, United States, nuked Iran. Say, guess what was going to happen? Oh, there will be no love lost, from the international community. And that is why they constantly were pushing Russia, Well, they're primitive people. They're very primitive people. Washington, D.C. is a bunch of primitives, including London too, And they were constantly pushing Russia. Yeah, tactical nuke, just do it. You're losing. Just use tactical nuke, like provoking Russians. Russians, of course, told him to pound sand. But the only reason they were doing this, because they know you use nuke, even tactical one. What you have PR. You can spin it. Now, obviously, Russians can actually kill the country, practically any European country without any nukes. Russia can turn Paris, for example, together with its political elite into the parking lot without any single nuke, okay? But so they wanted it because they knew that they can get that proper reaction of the international community. You see Russians use the nuke, tactical nuke. Yeah, 1 kiloton something. For what? I don't know why. Militarily, it makes no sense. But in case of you go in a new country, seriously, my God, you have the completely different world. We have completely different civilization after that. So, and I think some people, not all, some people in Trump administration, they understand. But American warmongers usually are, most of them are highly uneducated, highly uncultured people. They are not, ignoramuses, let's put it this way, especially in the military field. And the only thing they know, that's the only thing they know. That's the only thing Pentagon knows, because it was all this, it's PR, how we can spin it and how we can present it to the political elites. And so as a result, how many wars did the United States win since Korea? Well, Grenada, of course. Grenada.
Right.
Come on, Grenada. Hey.
Panama, I think they banned bomb.
Yeah, oh my gosh. Yeah, they are mighty Grenada. They, so, and there we are. And this explains everything because they operate in this alternative universe. They do not understand capabilities. They do not know own capabilities. They only have those desires of the donor class, of those political pressure groups from, like in Israeli lobby. There's Arab lobby too, So there are all kinds of lobby. We saw how Ukrainian lobby actually Ukrainized the whole Congress. So it's just, this is how it operates. Ask any member of Congress, including those people, all those Tom Cottons. Oh, Captain, like I was running, he won't be able to get the entrance exam in any Russian military academy. But they are, we're veterans. Okay, fine. What do you know about the world outside? What do you know about real war? Nothing. Zilch. Look at the American generals. One more after another. You look at Ben Hodges or Petraeus. Where are they with their? Remember their forecasts? Russia is about to collapse any minute now. They lost like 100 million people. They just have been like, okay, yeah, sure. These are the people. They were the epaulets of the U.S. Army and U.S. Armed Forces. You had this moron, what's his name? astronaut, and Russians cannot fly planes. They cannot fly formations. What do you expect from these people? You won't expect them. They know how to fight real war. No, they don't. They have no clue, actually. That's what it is. Yeah, I read American operational and field manuals and all that. It's like, yeah, sure, it's good. The problem is who are going to fight with that? What are you going to do when, that and this happened? There's nothing there. It's just like, yeah, long range fires. Hooray. Yeah, we're going to, yeah, it's all Patton-esque, so that's all Hollywood. And this is the reason why it is so dangerous, because obviously, as I spoke today in my video, we are having this Kubler-Ross grief model, when they have to admit that we were not that good to start with. I mean, we are good, but for what, And certainly, United States military doesn't know what real war is, which is the main. That's what professionals do. They look at the TOE, Table of Organization and Equipment. United States has the Table of Organization and Equipment from 1990s. It is the Army, the whole armed force from 1990s. It is 35 years obsolete. So, and then when they have this whole thing just appearing, and the last number, which, oh my God, if you look at those operations, like in Kursk, more than 70,000 killed of Ukrainians. And I mean, those people do not understand. They never had anything like this in their lives. They started all those campaigns, and again, how you can study them when most of them are confabulated primarily, So taken out of the strategic context, for example, in the World War II. And result is, as I already stated, you look at those Kings, you look at those Kellogg's, those American generals, good Lord, they wouldn't be allowed to command a company in Syria's army, Yet there they are. They talk about things they have no clue about. And as a result,
well, I want to ask you one last thing before we go. This is interesting because one of the things I've heard people say is, "Oh, I have a good friend of mine, and he goes, I hope the Russians don't get fooled, and I hope they don't." And I said, I've been paying attention to Vladimir Putin and Sergei Lavrov, and I'm going to say if I can figure it out, I'm pretty sure they can, right? Well, here's something interesting. Russia will never blindly trust Western's partners again. Putin, he said that Moscow's trust in European capitals has been fundamentally broken, that while Russia remains open to working with the EU to resolve the Ukraine conflict, it will no longer do so on the basis of trust. We're ready to work with Europe, but they behave inconsistently and keep trying to string us along. That's fine. We're used to it now. I hope we won't make any more mistakes based on trust in our so-called Western partners. And so, all the questions about, oh, will there be Minsk 3? Will there be a ceasefire? Will there be this or that? And the Russians are making it pretty clear. In fact, there was another article out where President Putin basically said, I would suggest that the UN or someone come in and run Ukraine, because basically the lunatics that they've got in Kiev now are not capable. Yeah. They're not real politicians. They just got madmen.
Yeah. This is the message to Europe and to Mr. Trump too. But I believe that Trump, I read today, and I made a video on this threat assessment by the Office of the Director of the National Intelligence. It is a funny document. Let me put it this way. I laughed in some senses. Yeah. And yeah, we know that. I mean, it never was the ceasefire. It's all diplomatic game. And as I spoke last time, you, Scott, and me were talking about, and many people correctly state, first time I agree with Mearsheimer. Russia throws a bomb to Trump for Trump to show something. At least, you see, we signed agreements. Those agreements were never meant to be, followed through by Ukrainian and European side. Everybody knows that. But at least Trump can say, hey, you see, I got that. I got those minerals, which actually do not exist in Ukraine. So it's just like, good Lord. I mean, and but yeah, Russians sit, nice and pretty, and they operate already in Sumy region and already in Dnipropetrovsk. And by God, Kryvyi Rog was beaten utterly to submission all those industrial and military. You probably saw yourself. In Sumy, they hide their ammunition depots in between their civilian apartment blocks and schools and things like that. So, well, Russians know where they're located, but then again, they have to blow it up. And what can you say? I mean, if the the windows and glass in the windows gets broken and you get shaken, well, too bad. I mean, nothing could be done about it. You still have to eliminate the remnants of the armed forces of Ukraine. And yes, now there is official. There are videos supporting 18-year-olds being driven to the front line. They're not gonna exist long there. And I'm talking about not the ones which are, bodyguards, which is fine, territorial defense. Those they go to, combat. I don't think so. They're survivable under any conditions there.
President Putin apparently said, not long ago, I said, we'll squeeze them. Now there's reason to believe we'll finish them off. Then I think a moment of realization must come to the Ukrainian people themselves. I've kind of felt like this all along. There's nothing worse. There's an old saying, give a man enough hope and he'll hang himself. Some people say rope, but sadly, these people have given these Ukrainians some kind of an idea or a hope that they can win or whatever. And at some point, it has to be driven home to them through sheer force of will that, look, here's your option. Here's a nice little unconditional surrender. Put your signature right here and we'll work this. That's the only way. I think that's the only way it ends at this point. Because the Ukrainians, any deal that you make, you still got this lunatic Zelensky running around with, this is a picture of the Kremlin on fire. Oh, we're going to stand up. We will not give up an inch of land. And I'm thinking, you remember the infamous Baghdad Bob guy?
Oh, yeah.
There were like American tanks going along behind him, driving literally right behind him. And he said, we'll defeat the Americans and they'll never.
Yeah. Baghdad Bob, by the way, that's what Petraeus was also. Russians will fall in a week. So Russians are sitting with the 150 square kilometers of the territory they have now additionally. So they're about to collapse. And this is what I was laughing today when reading this assessment, which made me laugh. They write there that, Russian public is possibly admitted to, whatever happens. No, Russian public is completely behind the special military operation and behind Putin, whose approval ratings are through the roof, and those morons still do not understand what they're dealing with. I speak all the time, and I will repeat it again. I will repeat it ad nauseam if need be, that if you take a look at how often he is using or try to hear this phrase, brotherly people, not in a long time. And the main question, especially last week, when he signed the executive order for Ukrainians who are on the territory of Russia. If you do not register, you will be deported back to your crap hole, So because essentially what you have with those people, you have their intel assets and terrorist cells inside Russia. And so that's what is happening now. And no more brotherly people. Russians do not want to live with them. Russians do not want Ukrainians near except for those people who identify themselves as Russians and they moved to Russia. And there are some people left there who wait for Russians to come, but majority of population, many people do not understand. They don't like Russians. They want to live like Russians, but they want to do it on Russian money and hate them in response. And that's what they didn't understand these dynamics. They say, where are those big arrows? Russians are treading very slowly because they need to also, as you correctly stated, convince that population that this is not what you think it is, and many, they begin to understand the reality. And again, they have their psychiatric issues there too,
Yeah, I think they've been brainwashed for decades and now they're going to pay the price. I'll put it like this. The United States brainwashed them into this rage of hating Russians and then weaponized that rage against them to get them to jump into a cage with a bear. It's never a good idea to jump into a cage with a bear. It's not going to work out for you. Andrei Martyanov, he's got a great blog, Reminiscence of the Future, and he also has a great YouTube. I don't know why people call it a podcast. I don't know if it's really a podcast. A YouTube show. That's what I call it. And it's called Smoothie X12. I watch it every show that comes out. It's great. It's about a half hour long, and you always learn something that you didn't know before. So make sure you go to his channel, that you subscribe. If people want to donate, where can they donate to you, Andrei?
I have on my blog this Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee thing. I don't know, maybe I have to open some other channels if people want to support me, but I have them in the right upper corner of my blog, which is called the Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee.
All right. Thanks. Same here. Patreon, buy me a coffee. Same here. Follow me on Rumble and follow me on Rockfin, so that I've had a couple of, what the weirdest thing, Scott and I and Andrei a few weeks ago did a show, and I woke up the next morning and YouTube, for whatever reason, I think things weren't going so well for the Europeans at that time. And we said some really bad things about the Europeans, and it was gone, but it was still on Rumble, and everybody could go over there and watch it. So follow me over there on Rumble and Rockfin in case YouTube does something that we don't want them to do. Thanks a lot, everybody. Make sure you share this on all your social media platforms. If you are not a subscriber, make sure you subscribe, and subscribe also over at Andrei's at Smoothie X12. We're out.
Bye-bye.